take it back to baseball and you think, nobody's ever going to post, hey, I struck out 4 times today.
Exactly.
They're only going to post when they have a 2 home run day and they're 3 for 4 or whatever. Yep. And the same thing goes with life. Mm-hmm. You only see people being happy, and then you think, why am I not that happy?
Yeah.
And we're all dealing with things, but we don't post those things.
Welcome to Mental Game Changers, the podcast where we dive deep into the minds of athletes who are redefining strength beyond the scoreboard. I'm your host, Tre Sangiacomo, and in each episode, we will explore the often unspoken challenges surrounding mental health in sports. From the pressures of competing to the triumphs of overcoming personal battles, we'll hear inspiring stories and gain insights from athletes who are not just champions in the field, but also advocates for mental wellness. Join us as we break down barriers, shatter stigmas, and empower each other to prioritize mental health on and off the field. Whether you're an athlete, a coach, or just someone passionate about sports, this podcast is for you. Let's change the game together. Welcome here. So today I am here with Clay Biggs, who is our athletic director here on campus. Would you mind just kind of introducing yourself and kind of explaining to us a little bit of like your background, like where you're from? You played sports growing up, I'm assuming, how you got into this role here as the athletic director on campus?
Sure. I'd love to. So, yeah, I grew up an athlete. I loved sports from the time I could play, and baseball was always my passion. So I was able to play in high school, of course, and then on to college. So I played my baseball in college at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri. And when I wrapped that up there, I wasn't done. Like, I still wanted to be involved in baseball. I knew that I wanted a career in it. I had a degree from Truman State in physical education, exercise science. And so I spent my first year as a PE teacher in Brashear, Missouri, which is just outside of Kirksville. And at the same time, I was able to stay on at Truman as an assistant coach for a couple years. And so I did that, and then saw the job opening for Hannibal-LaGrange. In fact, that's kind of a funny story. I was getting married at the time, and my wife was on the phone with her sister, my soon-to-be sister-in-law, and that was back in the days of dial-up internet. So it was like 2001. And my future sister-in-law at the time said, why doesn't he check Hannibal? I think they have a small college there. And I honestly had never heard of Hannibal-LaGrange at the time. So I kind of rolled my eyes, but then walked into the kitchen where the computer was and dialed up the internet. And sure enough, there was a job opening at Hannibal-LaGrange for head baseball, but it was also for head cross country and instructor of what at the time was physical education. So here I am, 25 years old. I've coached just a little bit of college baseball for a couple of years. I was currently, or at the time, I was a PE teacher, and I had been offered the varsity coaching position at Brashear, which is, if you know Brashear, it's tiny. It's really, really little, small school. So it would have been like the smallest 1A Missouri baseball, or I could try to go get this job at Hannibal-LaGrange, which I was just hearing about. In fact, when I drove over for the interview at Hannibal-LaGrange, I came down Highway 6 from Kirksville, and it says LaGrange North, Hannibal South, and I honestly didn't even know which way to go. So I chose the right way, got here, was hired as all 3 of the things that I applied for, and so I was in way over my head as a 25-year-old. But I was coaching baseball, and I was loving it. And when I inherited that team, we had 16 players that fall. And so I think we had 17. I was able to recruit a catcher going into the spring. We didn't have a catcher. And so we went through that first season with 17 players. I think I had 3 or 4 pitchers, some others that called themselves pitchers but really weren't.
Yeah.
We won 9 games. It was a rough season. But then over time, and that was 2002. And so I've been here ever since. I was able to hang up the cross-country coaching, which was interesting, to experience. I really liked coaching cross-country, but I had no experience with it.
Yeah.
So, and they were just starting the program. So it was like, here's cross-country. We're starting the program. Here you go, even though you know nothing. So I went out and read a book called Coaching Cross-Country Successfully from cover to cover, and did it for a couple of years. I liked it, but it was a lot. So I was coming to work at 5:30 to get cross country going at 6, and then I wouldn't leave till 7:30, 8 after baseball practice.
Oof.
And you're teaching in between that. So
Yeah.
it was a lot at the time, but I loved it. And I was able to coach college baseball at a very young age. Again, way in over my head, but to be handed a program like that, it was fun. It was exciting, and so I'm still here. So I coached baseball. I coached cross country for a couple years. I was able to let go of that, and we grew the baseball program throughout my time here. I coached baseball from 02 to 15.
Okay.
And so we went from 16 that first fall, and then by the time I left, we were at 55 to 60 pretty consistently in the program. So we grew the program.
Yeah. That's a big change.
Oh, man, it was so fun. It was so fun to be able to grow that and see the change and the difference of, making the playoffs consistently as opposed to never making the playoffs or very rarely when I came in. And so that growth in size, but also in the ability to compete within the AMC and the NAIA was fun to be a part of. And there were a lot of bumps along the way. I mean, there was a lot of growth that I had to go through. Like I said, I was young, but to be the fun part, and I tell our coaches this now, the fun part about it for me was like I got my own program and got to do with it what I wanted within the parameters of Hannibal-LaGrange, of course. But that's the nice thing that I can tell our coaches now is like you're kind of master of your domain with your program, and you can turn it into what you want it to be. And so I was blessed to be able to do that here.
Yeah. So I'm sure being way over your head, like you said, as a young 25-year-old coming in to teach or coach not only a sport you knew nothing about, but be the head coach of a program that like you had no idea existed probably a couple weeks before or however long it was before getting on campus. Like those are big changes, especially for a 25-year-old. Like you're still young, you're still trying to figure out life. How did things like that affect you like mentally, and how did you kind of navigate through those like mental challenges?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for me was realizing that I was a year, 2 years older than my oldest players. And that's a hard thing for them to swallow as well. And I was lucky because I inherited a group of guys that was just great. And we had some issues here and there, as you always will. But that was a really tough challenge. The good thing for me at the time, when you talk about mental health, and I think back to that time, I'm like, how did I even do that? Because, but at the time I didn't have kids. We had just gotten married. My wife was a teacher. And when you're young, you have that energy. And so I was able to do okay with it, but that was a lot. And so there were times where I felt burnt out. I felt tired. And as a coach too, people don't realize you're always on. You're on for your players, and if you're coaching two programs, that's multiple players. If you're in the classroom, you're on for your students at almost all the time, and especially since the advent of cell phones. And that was just before smartphones took off, but we still all had cell phones. So you're constantly on, and then you're also, the recruitment is such a big deal. And that when you come in and you've got 16 on the field in the fall, one of my number one priorities has to be recruiting. And so that too was draining. And so I think that added to some of the burnout that probably was there. I never got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore, but certainly very, very tired.
Yeah. When you think about mental health for student athletes, obviously being a coach, being a player, and now as an athletic director, you're around student athletes. You've been around student athletes for a very long time. Like, what do you think of, and like, what comes to mind first when you think of like the mental health of like today's student athletes?
The first two things come to mind for me are social media, cell phones. And I think that adds to a lot of our mental health challenges today. We didn't have to deal with it. I remember back in 2003 or whatever it was when MySpace first came along, and we didn't know what it was. Like as a coach, I didn't know what it was. We weren't ready for it, and then all of a sudden it's there, and there are kids on my team, other teams, getting in trouble for things that they're posting online. You have to realize that in 2002 that wasn't a thing, and then all of a sudden it became a thing. Yeah, and now it's grown into this massive thing that really a lot of people base their lives around. And they're watching others all the time. We had a great chapel a couple weeks ago, I thought, and he focused on social media,
Yeah.
cell
That was
phones.
a very
It was
big one.
eye-opening.
Was,
I went
yeah,
and
it
bought
was.
that book. He mentioned one of the books,
Yeah.
The Anxious Generation. I've read just the first chapter. But it has totally changed the landscape in terms of mental health. So I think about that and those challenges that not only are new, but I have no, us that are a little bit older, longer in the tooth, don't have a lot of background on how to deal with those things.
Yeah.
So that's challenging. And then also COVID. COVID pops right into my head. I think that was a time that was just so out there and so weird, and
Yeah.
we had never experienced anything like that.
That was one of those things that like kind of came out of nowhere. Like even for me, like I was a junior in high school when like COVID first like started back in 2020, and we got like shut down. And like I remember being like isolated and like being like stuck inside for however long it was before. I don't know how long it was in Missouri before your guys' like COVID laws got like lifted, but I know back up in Illinois, especially like closer to the city of Chicago, like we had like there were times where like stores were like they'd be barely open, like they'd be open for like a couple hours during the day, obviously more than like 3 or 4, but like obviously like Walmart, we're so used to Walmart being open a lot longer than it was back home. Like even just being able to like go outside, like me and my buddies like would joke around. It was like almost like illegal to go outside.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna grow up telling our kids like, hey, like just remember, like it was a time where like it used to be illegal to go outside. It was like I feel like social media is definitely a big thing, especially like I'm not as well like in tune with like other sports, but like baseball in particular. Like I know like baseball's a big thing because it's like I feel like it's like every day I hop on Instagram and it's like I see another video of like a 16-year-old kid from like somewhere in like the US or like California, or like even kids in like the Dominican Republic. They're like 16 years old throwing 95, and I'm like comparison is it can be really be like the thief of joy. Like I know it's a saying, but like it can like drain you. Like wow, like I'm trying to like do everything I can, and then like some kids are just rolling out of bed and like performing at like the highest levels.
Yeah.
And it's like it really can like affect people mentally. So like I really do agree with like the social media aspect. I think social media just comes down to like a lot of comparison. Like it's always people comparing themselves to like someone else that like they don't even know.
Right.
Or like comparing themselves to like pro athletes. Like people are like someone like so and so's doing this, like why can't I do this? Or it's like with baseball specifically, like it's such a game that's like literally based on failure. Like you are statistically set up to fail. Like the best of the best, even in the pros, are failing 70% of the time. And it's like dealing with failure, I feel like with baseball is like it really helps you kind of like learn to deal with failure. But like if you're not able to like learn and you can't learn how to deal with failure, that's one of those sports where that can really destroy and like kind of like ruin like your mental health.
100%. I think that's why baseball's so great. I mean, you're right. You're going to fail all the time.
Yeah.
And so if you can handle that, failing all the time, it's a good precursor for life, because there's going to be a lot of failure there too. And so that's what I thought was always so great about baseball and sports in general, really. I think baseball's the best at that, but you're gonna fail in all sports, and
100%. Like you're not gonna be perfect. No one's perfect.
The other thing I've noticed about social media, and I think this is what I'm witnessing, but I'll notice even the type of workouts that individuals will do now for their sport. Like I watch them in the gym, and I think, where'd they get that? And they're getting it off social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that because I can do the same thing. If I go to my feed, it's going to tell me how to stay in shape for an old guy. And if you're into baseball, you're going to see all these workouts and these things. So, and there's some good in that.
Yeah.
But then there's also some, am I doing enough? Am I measuring up? There's a constant measuring stick that you're up against other people, what they're doing, how good they are, all of those things.
That can really be, that kind of all just goes back to like comparison is really like the thief of joy. And I feel like that can cause a lot of burnout, especially if you're like going through and you're day in, day out, busting your butt in the gym, busting your butt on the field or on the court. And then it's like, and then on top of that, you still have classes, you have kids. Obviously, we're still trying to be social with one another, not just lock ourselves in our room like a bunch of like hermit crabs.
Right.
And it's like not being social can really, that's another thing that can really, that's what one thing I think COVID really did, like it really did damage on, because it was like we went from like being able to like see each other like every day to like with the snap of a finger, it was like you can't see your friends anymore. Like
Yeah.
my parents at first, like we didn't have, like people weren't allowed to come over to our house because we didn't know what was going on. Like it was really like, it was an eye opener because it all just happens so quick. And I feel like, so like growing up even in the social media era, if people want to call it that, like even social media, like for me, it snuck up on me fast because I remember it was like one day I'm like 12 years old, like, you know, not a care in the world, and it's like the next day I'm like I'm like worrying about like what's going on Instagram, or like what so and so's doing, or someone's going on a vacation, and it's like, oh well, you know, like why can't I do that?
Right.
Like why do they get to do it?
Yeah, you take it back to baseball and you think nobody's ever going to post, hey, I struck out 4 times today.
Exactly.
They're only going to post when they have a 2 home run day
Yeah.
and they're 3 for 4 or
Yep.
whatever. And the same thing goes with life.
Mhm.
You only see people being happy, and then you think, why am I not that happy?
Yeah.
You know, and we're all dealing with things, but we don't post those things as much. So
How do you make sure that the coaches and like the staff here are like more able to help kids who are dealing with mental health?
yeah, okay. So one thing that I would tell you right up from the jump is when we hire coaches, we have a motto here, and it's coaching is what you do, but it's not why you're here, right? And so there's a bigger purpose. We want to impact lives for the kingdom, and part of that is caring for and being a part of mentoring young people that are in your program. And so as we go through the process of hiring coaches, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are dialed into wanting to help with that. Of course, they have to have a knowledge of their sport, and they have to want to win. I mean,
Yeah.
sports are competitive for a reason, and that's what makes them so great. But at the end of the day, the record, I can't tell you my record in 2014, 2015. I can kind of give you a ballpark, but I can tell you what kids on those teams are doing right now, whether or not they're married, have families, whether or not they know Jesus, that type of thing is so important. And so that's why we really impress that to our coaches, and in the hiring process, that's who we're looking for.
How do you encourage athletes to speak up if they're struggling with mental health? Given today, I feel like, and it was probably the same thing when you were playing sports, but like athletes, I feel like always have like the stigma of like, oh, just tough it out. Like it's just a rough patch. Like just tough it out, you'll be fine. Like things like that. How do you encourage athletes to like want to be able to speak up?
Well, I think from a coaching perspective, and so I have to go back to my coaching days on this one.
Of course.
You have to take advantage of the opportunities that you're given around just practices and games to be able to intentionally pour into lives. And that might be in the dugout before a practice, right? You might be walking around and you might be just looking at faces and who's got a long face and why do they have that? And then find a time to pull them aside and say, hey, something wasn't right today. Is everything going okay for you? And to be able to have that relationship so that you can ask those questions, I think is so important. And then being dialed in and want to be there for individuals when you know they are struggling or might be struggling. But I think it's laying the foundation of building relationships and pouring into those relationships daily. Now with coaches, that's what I would encourage them to do. Like I would encourage them to take the time, to make the effort, to have meetings with individuals, sometimes on a scheduled basis, but sometimes just, hey, bring somebody in and say, hey, you know, I've noticed this or that. How are things going? Is there anything I can help you with? And sometimes that will then initiate a conversation where something comes out that you didn't know about.
So we talked about burnout earlier. You know, athletes dealing with academics, their athletics, having a personal life, like trying to balance all of that can definitely lead to burnout. Like, what advice would you give to athletes who may be starting to feel that sense of burnout, or maybe starting to struggle with that burnout because they're trying to focus on balancing everything at once?
Yeah. Well, college is good in a number of ways. One of the ways that it prepares you for life is that all of a sudden you go from high school where you're told where to be all day, what time to be there, all the things, to you might have a class at 8 and then nothing till 11, and then you've got practice at 3, that type of thing. So your schedule becomes all of a sudden erratic, and you then are responsible for how you utilize your time. And this is one of the biggest adjustments, I think, for college students to make. And we see this like in the freshman GPA. So of all my teams, if you go back, you look at all of them, I would almost guarantee you that my freshmen have their lowest GPA in their first 2 semesters. And oftentimes the first semester is the absolute worst because you're trying to learn how to balance all of that. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is working with those athletes to build structure where the structure is no longer given to them.
Yeah.
You know, and teaching them how to budget their time. No longer are the days where you can just go to class at 8 and then maybe take a nap till 10:50 and then run over to your 11 o'clock class because you know you've got practice this evening and then you've got a meeting after that or something like that. So you have to build that scaffolding so that you don't run into that issue.
Yeah, I remember my freshman year when I was at my last school. Like that was when kind of like, I don't want to say reality set in, but like it was like a really big eye opener. Like I struggled with a lot of like anxiety and panic attacks just like being away from home for the first time. I was like, I think like 5 or 6.5 hours away from home when I first left. So it was like, I was like 19 years old, 6.5 hours away from home. It's like, it can be a real big adjustment. So that was when like I started, obviously I ended up dealing with a lot of panic and anxiety attacks. I ended up getting medication for it. I still take like medication for it to kind of like help mellow me out. So like I do honestly think that like the freshman like adjustment period, like that is when they're going to be like their GPA most of the time is going to be the worst. And I remember like at my last school, like there wasn't like, I didn't have anyone like coaches or like anyone who was like even like cared to like, it felt like they didn't even really like care to like offer help. And like when I come here, like the 2 years now that this will be my second year here, like this year and a half that I've been here, like it just makes me kind of like almost wish that I spent 4 years here just because of like the support and just how close I am with all of like the coaches. Like I remember like I was here for like 2 months and I remember I called my dad one day after practice and I was like, you know, it's really weird. Like I've had more conversations like in person and like text message conversations with Coach Babcock than I had with my coach at my last school the entire time I was there. And I was there for 2 years. So like 2 years and 2 months, like just the communication differences, like I've grown so much closer to the Babcocks here. Like I like Coach Paul, like I look at him as like, he's definitely like my father figure away from home. Like I know like when I'm struggling, like earlier in the year, I was struggling with some things going on back home. So I remember I talked to him and he was like the first one there. Like he pulled me aside during practice and he offered to like, you know, he prayed with me and he was just talking to me like, you know, like if there's anything you need. So like just having that support system, even as an older guy, like it coming in, if I was a freshman coming here, it would have made things, I feel like a little bit easier. But also at the same time, if I wasn't here for my first 2 years, I don't think I would have learned the same like kind of like lessons and like coping mechanisms that I learned that I know now and that like I'm able to help with other people. Like whenever I see freshmen struggling, like being away from home, especially we have kids from like Texas on the team, so like they're like over 12 hours away from home, and obviously 18 years old, you're on the other side of the country basically. From your parents, and it's like it can be rough. So like I try to make sure I'm like checking up on them, but it's like that things like that, like making sure they're not getting burnt out from practice and classes, because all of that can really like burn out someone if they're not ready. Like it's like it does, college life does sneak up on you if you're not ready.
Well, 2 things I would say there. Number one, I was right with you. Like my freshman year, I remember sitting in my dorm room thinking all I want to do is go home.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to do, you know, and I was able to stick it out and stayed there. But I know that feeling. Like it is a reality for many, many people. Yeah. And the second thing is I'm so pleased to hear you say what you just said, because one of the things I always argue about Hannibal-LaGrange is that that's kind of who we are and that's what we can offer. That's our niche in my mind. Like we can offer that little bit of personal attention. Relationship building is there, and your instructors know who you are. They know your name. They know you're a baseball player.
Yeah.
Your baseball coaches care about your academics. They care about you as an individual. They care about your spiritual life. And so I think with our size,
Yeah.
something we do really well, and that's what I always tell people. And I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, that's why like another thing like I have enjoyed going to like smaller schools. My last school, like it's not like it was like a big in-state university or anything. It was like a smaller school, not like it was definitely bigger than it is here. But like even like I just enjoyed being like at the smaller schools because like it is really nice to like you see like a professor walking in between classes, say hi. Like it's nice. Even at my last school, like my communications professors, like they knew who I was because I spent most of my time with them, like
Right.
that being my major. So like things like that, like it is really nice. But here it's like I feel like the personal connection, like you said, it's so much stronger. And that is one thing that like I will argue for like going to smaller schools over bigger like in-state schools. Like yeah, you might have like the more like stereotypical like college experience if you go to like a big state school like Mizzou or like anything else of that nature, but you're not going to get the same connections, I don't think, that you will if you came to a school like here at HLG.
That's good to hear you say that.
If other athletic directors were listening to this conversation, what advice would you give them about prioritizing athletes and their mental health?
Well, I think it goes back to what I originally said, which is you've got to find coaches that are in it for the right reasons. I mean, it all kind of comes and goes with an athletic department with who you've hired to run the programs. I think that's so important. And so you'll run into a lot of people that think they want to be coaches but don't really understand what goes into that. And, when I was talking about being burned out back in 2002, 2003, I'd like to think that some of that was because I was trying to do it the right way and build relationships and pour into people's lives and change their lives. If it was just a matter of winning ball games and conducting a good practice, I don't think I would have probably stuck with that very long. And so I think you have to find coaches that really have a heart for building those relationships, for mentoring and building the next generation. I mean, that's essentially what they're doing. There's nothing better than athletics to build character and integrity and all those things. And so I think the people you employ, the people you find to lead your young people are so important. That's what I would highly suggest.
All right. Looking ahead in the future, let's say maybe like 5-6 years down the road, what kind of changes or initiatives would you like to see like here on campus to like help athletes with their mental health?
Well, it would be wonderful if we had somebody on campus full time.
Yeah.
Somebody that was dedicated to mental health across at a school like ours. It's probably not going to just be athletics, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be campus wide. I will say this before I go any further down that road. I think right now our student life department does a really good job with
100%.
the resources that they do have.
Yeah.
In fact, I just got a call from them yesterday. They're wanting to coordinate on a new way for us to handle when we get a student alert. So we have a student alert system on campus that is sent to professors, it's sent to advisors, coaches, when somebody might be struggling, when a student might be struggling, whether that be academically or mentally or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got a call yesterday with an idea of how we could strengthen that relationship with athletics and make sure everybody's getting followed up on. And so I think they do a fantastic job. But certainly you're seeing more and more on campuses somebody that's dedicated full time to mental health. And so if we could ever be in position for something like that, I think it would be really beneficial. I will say this too. One of the things that we're starting this semester, I've got a couple students that are heading it up. It's called the Association of Student Athletes. And we're really required to have one of these through the NAIA, but we haven't in the last couple of years. It's kind of fallen by the wayside. But it will be an opportunity for athletes to have a voice, to be able to communicate with one another, but then also have a voice up to like the athletic department. Like, what are the things that we do need to do better for our athletes?
Yeah.
So at Truman, when I was there, they called this the captain's roundtable, but basically two people from each team that get together and they meet and they talk about what's going well, but also what are some things that we can improve that would improve the overall life of our athletes, experience of our athletes, but also the mental health of our athletes as well. So I think that'll be a good thing as well coming up.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. Is there anything else that you would like to just kind of add on, speak about, anything of that nature?
I don't think so. It's been great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Mental Game Changers. We hope that you learned about the off-field battles athletes face and the significance of mental health. Remember, it's completely okay to ask for help, whether you're an athlete or anyone else. You're not alone in your struggles, and reaching out can make all the difference. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share it with others who might need to hear this message. Let's continue to break the stigma around mental health together. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep pushing forward.